Welcome to Good Service. We are your hosts, Ben Chung.
And Kevin's up.
Each week, we'll be bringing you real, raw, and vulnerable talks about life, faith, and everything in between, and always over a fire meal.
Pull up a chair. Let's eat.
Folks, welcome back to another episode of Good Service. We are your hosts, Ben.
Kevin.
And as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube or video, we are not in our normal place. We are in a new place. This may be our new home. We don't know.
Could be.
And today we have to figure out a new setup. And yes, we're very excited to be here. So shout out to the good folks over here at the lab. Today, guys, we are joined by Chris Deaver and Ian Clawson. So they're pretty cool. They've done a lot of really cool things with some companies that you may have heard about. So Chris is a people leader. He is a leadership coach. He's focused on building high growth cultures people love. He's coached C-level execs in companies such as Apple, Disney, and has helped shape iProducts as well as Star Wars experiences. Ian is the co-founder of Brave Core Writer, along with Chris. They are the co-hosts of Lead with a Question podcast and co-writers of the book Brave Together. Ian and Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
So glad to be here.
We're hungry. Yes. So speaking of which, because we couldn't get our hands off the food, so let's get into the food.
Yes.
Kevin, what are we having today?
We are having today, shout out to Chicken Maisón. It is a local South Bay, near Los Angeles area treat. There's a lot more branches in this area. That's why I shout out South Bay with Chicken Maisón.
South Bay.
I'm not sure where their origin story is, but I believe it is South Bay. I could be wrong. But
South Bay all the way.
South Bay all the way.
All the way. And we have a delicious rotisserie chicken, Mediterranean style. We have the lemon, I believe it's like lemon basil for you guys. And we have the spicy garlic.
Let's go spicy.
We have some spicy hummus, regular hummus, potato salad, and we got these nice little treats here. I didn't even know what it was called, but I just say, hey, can I get two of those? Because those look really good.
Can't go wrong.
But I know there's honey on top of, I believe, deep fried pita chips.
I think they're called pita papas.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
You should just rename them. I mean, that's a great name.
But there's pistachio crumbles on top.
Dude,
we're super hungry. So let's get into our first segment so we could eat this thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, what are you gonna go for first? Should we go with the?
Yeah, I'm just gonna dig into whatever.
Dig into the chicken. Okay, yeah. Just prepare the first bite before we do that. So,
get some chicken.
I'll drop the first bite reflection question right now. So, before we eat, we always like to get a thought going to sort of start the conversation. And as I was prepping for today, and I was praying for you guys and knowing what you guys are, what you guys do for a living, but also I was at a talk that was here at this location months back, and you guys were talking about a topic that I found to be super relevant to what I'm personally passionate about. You guys are talking about co-creating, which we will definitely dive into more. But along with that, as people who, you guys, I feel like are people who study people. Like that's like, you know, that's the work that you guys do that helps you come up with even this idea of like writing a book about co-creating. So even I was dialing it back even more. I was like, okay, like what does that look like in terms of figuring things out? How does one learn about creating culture and co-creating and things like that? So the idea of discovery came to mind. So with that, what is something that you've discovered about yourself, particularly in the last 4 years? The reason I say last 4 years is because the last 4 years was us climbing out of a pandemic. And I think that itself, COVID has taught us so many things about ourselves, so many new things about ourselves, which I think has led to a lot of new discoveries. So what is something that you've discovered about yourself within the last 4 years? All right, now I'm gonna prepare my bite.
Yes.
Hey,
That's a good one.
you know what? We're gonna just dive into the deep, and I'm gonna go right for the.
Discovered about yourself in the last 4 years.
Yes,
I'm going for salad. I mean,
Hey, you know,
the salad.
Ian's the healthy guy. He's the healthy guy. All right, I'm gonna start with my chicken. All right, so everyone got their bite
okay,
ready.
yeah.
All right, we're gonna do air dab it up here.
Okay,
Boom.
yep,
I'm gonna
yep.
dip it in some sauce.
Okay.
Let's see. Whoa. Whoa.
Wow.
very fresh.
Yeah.
That is a flavor burst.
So Chicken Maisón, what I love is
Oh my
other
gosh.
Mediterranean spots that I've been to, they usually just do rotisserie chicken and all the sauce are on the side.
Right.
But they do this thing where they just drench in
It is
marinade,
drenched in the sauce.
and it's so good.
There's
digging it.
It's tangy, it's garlicky, it has kick to it.
Yep.
Shout out
And this
Chicken
garlic
Maison.
white sauce, by the way, guys.
Yeah,
right
I'm
in front
gonna
of you.
Yeah, I
go
just
for
cracked
one.
that open. I'm
Yup.
about to. Yeah.
Yeah, please try it.
Oh,
that
there we
sauce
go. That's
is
a perfect
everything.
little piece.
So that's a deep question.
Yes, we like to go deep. We're yeah, we don't go shallow mode here.
I mean, how deep do we want to go? You know, that's the question.
However that makes, like, however you resonate with that question.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well-
it doesn't need to be. I mean, you could be like, hey, I discovered that I love running. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah.
it could be there, or
I want something deeper than that.
yeah, maybe a little bit deeper.
Okay.
But like, yeah, it could be something like life rhythm wise, mindset wise, you know, anything.
I got something.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So for me, I would say that I've lived my life where I'm a truth seeker,
Mm-hmm.
and not that I'll ever stop being a truth seeker. You know, you want to heat map those things in life that are going to be anchors for you to make good decisions and to be in truth and not be in the shadows, right? Not live life in the shadows. So for me, I want to say that the discovery in the last 4 years was this shift that I wanted to make. And I wouldn't say that it was so clear, but in retrospect, it's become defined, is now I want to be a truth teller. Not that I'm abandoning the seeking aspect of it, but I think what we've been able to accomplish with writing a book and writing in publications and speaking on our podcast, it's all about truth telling.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to echo a question once everyone gets to chime in on this, but it's what do you know at your heart? Like what's something you know that's true? And then tell it. And so instead of being on the sidelines, if something's not right, it's like, you don't need to make waves. You don't need to be the agitator, but tell truth, tell the truth. You know, let's quit putting up these fronts. Let's quit putting up the image of something and just speak truth by living true. And it's hard to do, but that's what I'm striving for. That's a discovery.
Amazing.
Wow.
I love that.
Super timely too.
Yeah, I mean, I think you phrased that interesting. Like, instead of being a truth seeker, be somebody who tells the truth, but the truth that's coming from something that's true from where you're at. And I don't know why my mind goes to the word identity. Our truth that we tell comes from who we think we are, right? Like, at the core of your person, what is going on in here and what comes out is you telling your truth. And I think that's such an important thing to be able to do, because at the end of the day, we function from our identity because that's where we feel like our purpose comes from, right? Like, who we are as people is where we are sort of kind of driving that car, and like I'm living from that, and so this is my purpose and this is where I go with all the things. So
And so much
yeah,
of
that's good.
our identity has been shaped by others.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's discoveries about learning that, but then unlearning the things that we keep telling
Oh
ourselves.
man,
Right?
yeah.
Oh man.
And one of the thoughts
Love that.
too with this is our personal identities, our truth may be imperfect because we are,
Right.
Yeah.
and embrace that messiness.
Yeah.
Right. Because going back to what we put on the surface, and if our surface approach as to the impact we try to have on the world. And we saw this, right, with kind of the fall or the discontent with the influencer kind of approach, right? The self-made celebrity. And people went away from that. And I think maybe it's kind of a shedding of like a kind of a snake skin, right? And we're coming into ourselves and saying, well, yeah, what is truth? If I'm in pursuit of truth, where do I start? Right. I think for me, going back, 3-4 years, but especially recently, as to part of this, for me, it starts with hope. I think of that, it's probably the one scene in X-Men that I remember, because Days of Future Past, where it's old Dr. X talking to young Dr. X. And young Dr. X is a mess, right? It's the real, right? He's in the full battle of, he's checked out. He thinks it's over. But the strange thing, the irony of this is that older Dr. X is actually facing the end of days at the time. So the guy that should be really startled and scared and afraid and done is him. But he says to the younger version, we need you to hope again. And I think if there's a message to myself, my younger self, or my 4-year ago self, we need you to hope again.
Wow.
Whoa. I never thought so deeply about an X-Men movie in my life. I'm like, what?
That's good.
I actually love that movie. It was so like, it like when it came and went so fast, that movie. But man, I love, that's such a...
They're bringing it back.
Yeah.
Are they really?
X-Men. Yeah.
Let's go.
Oh, yes.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah. So 4 years, you know what's crazy about your question, Ben? I was like thinking about my answer to that too, of like in the 4 years, man, the pandemic really uncovered quite a bit. That's really what it is, right? It's 2020 to now. Totally. So like,
yeah,
it's like forced discovery. Like,
right.
Like you got to face yourself for almost like 2 years of being locked indoors, right? That's a lot of me time. That's a lot of personal development. Almost you have to, right? I mean, the biggest thing for me, I have to just, I mean, honestly, I had to just be honest. And it's really, my entire life got redevoted and rededicated to God in that time. It really did. Because 4 years ago, I was still just hustling and grinding and building, but I don't really, it was really purposeless. There was a lot of imagined purpose, right? There was a lot of like purpose to fit in. Cause like it would be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like making money for the family, that always makes sense. Or, surface level
needs
purpose,
or desires.
Yep. But there was always like this deep grumbling inside that I thought like, oh, I need to be doing something bigger, not just by scale, but bigger as literally like impact.
Ooh, yeah. Let's go.
Yeah. And impact is what I was seeking, and I didn't even know that. And it all changed about within those 4 years. It was like 2 years ago was this like radical encounter where it was like all supernatural. And so because of that, I was like, right. That's what it was. The original design. That's what it was. It goes back to my maker, goes back to God. And so when that came in, it changed literally everything about me. Like I'm talking, you guys got to see me after the fact because that's where we met. Right. So all that.
I want to hear about rough Kevin.
This has changed Kevin right now.
Yeah.
I'm talking to change Kevin.
Rough Kevin either.
Actually, Ben never met me there either. Yeah.
You were like coming out of that.
I was coming out of that.
Yep.
And so
but that's what attracted you.
Absolutely. It was raw and real.
Yeah.
It was relatable. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And the vulnerability, being able to wear that properly and understanding why it's important to be that raw and real. Also, you mentioned when we first met, you felt the energy. You guys both said that to me, which thank you guys for that. Loving on the energy that I had, but because it was so real, because there is no
being
more
yourself.
Yep. I'm just being me.
Do you feel like you were hiding that before?
I think it was me with it always had a string attached.
What about a facade?
Yes. So it was a facade because it could have been real, but I didn't let it because it was transactional. Somewhere there was a means to an end every time I did most things.
So you presented a certain way.
Yes.
So your relationship with God changed this.
It changed it completely, and it amplified who I was already. And it took all the false transactions out of my heart.
Wow.
And so now when I meet people, whatever I was before, it just became this like super version of it now, which is great.
It's amplified.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, like I could actually improve as a human.
There's
like,
hope
get
for me.
out. You know? So that was, man, that's a crazy deep question, dude. Yeah.
Sorry, bro.
I know. I'm all trying to eat here. No, I'm kidding.
Like
I'm
you
kidding.
lead off at the Grand Slam. So where do we go from here?
Yeah, where do we go, dude? Like,
Hey, you know what? When the Holy Spirit gives you the question, you just gotta respond to it.
yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, you know, like I asked this question not because like I have the answer for myself. I'm like, I don't even really like when I ask it, I'm like, wait, so what's that for me? I don't even know.
It's ongoing, right?
Yeah.
Discovery's ongoing.
Absolutely. And I love that. I would say for me, there would be, I guess, a 2-part answer to that. I think what I've discovered, a couple things is context is I've been used to career-wise building my career with other people, and which is a great thing. But I was so used to that when the top of the pandemic hit, there was a lot of change even with the organization that I sort of was running with. And then, I mean, because everybody's going through something that they've never been through before. And I think what showed in the pandemic was the human nature's response to something like this, I guess, perceived danger, to go into like preservation mode, like self-preservation. So everybody, when they go into like, I have to preserve life, and this is
more guarded, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think not to fault anybody for whatever they do when they feel like they need to guard themselves, but we really saw like, wow, like this is what we're dealing with now. So I have to figure out my own situation. And so I think what I realized was like, wow, I've lived my whole life sort of being tribal, finding safety in my tribe, and then also
dependent on the tribe.
Dependent on the tribe, and then being, I guess this is where the vulnerability is going to come in, like wondering, like, do I still have my tribe in a time like this, or do I got to figure out how to fend for myself? So
Existential.
Who is your tribe now?
yeah, dude, my tribe is different now. And I feel like my tribe has really formed a completely different makeup of people in the last 4 years. I mean, there still are, my partners and, my dance crew, like that's still, I would say, a part of what's kind of there, but like kind of like my, you have like your periphery tribe and then you have like your core tribe.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of where I'm seeing there's been shifts even from like people who were kind of my core have be just through life have become a little bit more periphery, and then there's a new sort of core. And I say that because I mean I don't want to offend anybody who's listening here. Like I love all my friends like to the death of me, you know what I mean? Like I would do whatever for my friends, but you just have to understand
that framing's important though.
You have to recognize like who actually are like you closest to. Because if you're not aware of it, or you think it's these people, but it's not actually those people, the way that you invest your time and focus is going to be skewed even in your own mind. You're like thinking, oh, well, these are my closest folks, but are you actually investing that much time and energy into these people who you say are your closest core people? So in the attempt to be very honest, I'm like, okay, it's shifted. Those people who are now not as much. And there is a new group of people that are. And so I guess
what a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a blessing. Like,
and to have that time frame accelerated, right?
Oh yeah.
And that's
versus
we're all
versus
trying to sort
10
this
or 20
stuff
years
out too,
from
by
now.
the way.
That's why we're in a therapy session here for each other. Like how have we and how are we dealing with the pandemic? But I love how you put it. Like the pandemic was like a forced accelerator of you're gonna figure this out faster than you would have even liked to because
you want to.
Right,
Not comfortable.
like, totally uncomfortable.
Pain
and so
for everybody.
yeah, I think my discovery is like, yeah, this is how I've been. I've been very tribal and almost reliant on my tribe. And then also, you know, we had our moments of like, you know, we were isolated. So there was like, how do you figure out how to do this life when you don't have the luxury of your tribe all the time?
Right.
What are you going to do in your alone time? How do you discover how to be sort of like solo, you know, in some ways? While still maintaining like even from FaceTimes and Zoom chats and like, how do you still stay connected with your tribe? And I think right now where I'm like, so in my like sort of beginning of this 4-year span to at the, you know, tail end of it, or I guess just call it present day, is the discovery of, can you do it again? Meaning like I found dance 20 plus years ago. And that was where I sort of like decided I'm going to double down on this and this is going to become my career path. And it's done me pretty well. You know, it's gotten me to where I'm at today. And then now that I'm kind of like at the sort of, you know, as we age, we can't perform at the physical levels as we once used to.
You're talking about rebirth.
Yeah. I am at a rebirth. I'm at a rebirth and I'm discovering that.
Man, you guys and your language
I
are
know,
so
like,
good, dude. You guys just
You guys got a podcast? Did you guys write a book or something?
Someone must be a writer, dude.
Yeah, you guys are pretty good with your words.
That's like
But you know, like, yeah, I'm at a rebirth, and the discovery of the rebirth also comes with a bit of fear and anxiety because it never feels good to be reborn. I mean, think about like a baby being born into the world. The baby is completely like, this whole world is foreign to me. Like nothing here. I don't know how any of this stuff works.
Yep.
You have to teach me. Like you're dependent on your parents for life and death as a baby. So to be born into something, you're just like, everything is new. And so when you're a grown adult, when we think we're supposed to have it all figured out. So when you're reborn into something as an adult, it's very uncomfortable.
Feels very childlike.
Yeah. But maybe that childlike state is where we're supposed to be. That's the good stuff.
And it was the thing we forgot sometimes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
About what it feels like to be playful.
Right.
To create. Right. Or to know who your true friends are. Because your true friends are the ones that are going to have your back. Right?
Wow. Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
So with that, I mean, I think we're already kind of like going right into this idea of community, culture, doing things together, finding your tribe. And you guys have made a whole, you know, not only like made that your guys' focus. And I would love to know where that even came from. Even like
actually, before we go there, I wanted to hear his 4-year.
Oh, did we not get that from you, Chris?
Yeah, I wanted to hear, man.
I shared the X-Men thing, but it was more
Okay,
general.
I think
right?
he's
trying to skip his 4 years.
Hey, I'm not gonna let you skirt by with the
You're like, we're not getting let you get away.
You're not Dr. X.
Yeah, come on,
You
man.
gotta break Chris down.
Okay.
I wanna come on, man.
All right, we're not going too personal, but no, you know what's crazy is the pandemic hit me at a time where I had already been through one of the deepest valleys of my life.
Oh wow!
Right
dude.
before,
Wow.
right before Ian knows. And so actually, when it hit, it was a shock to my system. But I had been in the depths, and so it was like suddenly everybody else is there too, right? Yeah. I mean, and I had wrestled with these deep questions about my patterns.
Wow.
My close relationship, my marriage, like a lot of things that were happening that, you know, betrayal, things that I like, hadn't expected, right?
Wow.
Blindsided. And I was, and you're talking about rebirth. I mean, one of the things I've read that really, really hit me, and you know, it's far and few and far between where you see. Let's go to the music world, right? We're talking about dance. So like, okay, where a band can truly transcend time. Very few have done it. Most of them are one-hit wonders, and that's pretty good, right? If you have a career out of a song, right? Beatles transcended, generally speaking, but then they eventually broke up, right? U2 has transcended the decades and stayed together, reinvented themselves, right? Now, with the exception of one album, Discoteque, which they issued a formal apology for. Besides that, right? Every other album, generally speaking, pretty dang good, but very different. And in his book, Bono says about this rebirth, he says, we set out on a journey, and they were actually they were a Christian band to begin at the roots.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And especially Bono on the Edge. And he said, we knew that this was a process going to be about life, death, and rebirth. And we were going to plan for that.
Whoa. Wow.
And because in the rebirth, you go to life again, right? And what is that life that you're creating for yourself or with others?
Wow.
It's a new experience.
Right.
Wow.
And when I had these experiences they felt like death, right? It felt like that there are parts of me that won't come out of this. But if these are parts of me that don't need to come out of that are actually
shave offs,
the change, right? The C.S. Lewis, the house. I'm the house. Lord comes in and I say, hey, clean the floor. That's fine. Dust off some things and you're done. Thanks. And he's like, oh no.
Wow.
You see that room over there? We're going to take it out.
Wow.
We're going to renovate the kitchen.
Yeah.
And at first it's just pain, right? Just tearing it out. It's like a surgery and watching somebody get it. It looks like you don't know anything about surgery. It's like an alien watching this. Like, why are you killing this person?
Right.
No, he's saving them. Right. And then the process of the house is this is going to be so much better than what you've ever experienced before.
Yeah.
And I had a version of that coming out of it. And then it's just gotten more and more so. Like I still have struggle. I still have pain that's unbelievable. But that notion has helped me so much. And we talk about in the book of, turning pain into power. The world teaches, hey, no pain, no gain. But I'll say like, I got enough pain. I'm not going to go around looking for more pain, I'm not the shredded dude in the gym all the time doing this, And more power to him. But I'm like, in reality, all of us folks, right? All of us people, we don't have to go searching for that. We have enough.
Yeah.
But it's what we do with that pain. And if we turn it into fuel for the future through things like forgiveness, forgiveness of ourselves, most importantly.
Good. Yeah.
That was hardest for me. It was like, and these things that I perceived as maybe mistakes, but they were social, right? It's like, this is a social consequence. People say, oh, it's, it's a divorce, it's this or that. You're like, yeah, but what have I learned? And if I did everything I could, I left it all on the field, and I'm personally speaking, or for the work we've done together. It's like, yeah, then you're doing just fine.
It's good. It's good.
Wow. I love how you, yes, we are all sort of naturally wired to avoid pain when at all costs, right? Like going to the gym, and I think that's that's a different type of pain, but no one ever goes looking for heartache. No one ever goes looking for betrayal, things like that. Like those are all things that unfortunately live life long enough, you will be, dealt a hand that looks like that at some point.
Down.
But as you were saying, like to have a mindset that can convert pain into a power, pain into like a lesson learned to give you now wisdom, right? And that's something that most people learn later in life. Again, I think in our youth, again, we're just trying to be pain avoidant. We're trying to run away from things, trying to do things that we're like, how can I set my life up where I will have the least resistance, the least amount of like potential mistakes or things going wrong. And then as of course we learned that we just can't control those things. Life will happen to you. And I would imagine for Chris, just hearing that story of like you having gone through something pretty difficult, painful right before the pandemic. And so you're kind of just like, it was just like residual, like, okay, now a pandemic, have to go through that. And, I'd love to get into even the story of, your professional careers and how your guys' life experiences shaped even how you approached your professional careers and in the things that you guys have been able to do and create in the amazing spaces that you guys have been able to create in. So yeah, I would love to get into that and how that sort of started and how those life experiences blended into the professional pathway.
Yeah, I think it's a good segue because, I mean, speaking for myself, like the pain I was experiencing, it was gradual. It became compounding. But so my connection with Ian, which really started with our kids, they were playing basketball together, and we ended up going to his house. He had like a man cave, and we hang out in there. Right?
Nice.
Yeah, dope.
And then we started on creative ideas, like sharing them together.
Get vulnerable.
But this was also, I was saying escape, but it was a portal at the time for me to step away from this pain that was inexplicable in my life and that I couldn't do a lot about. I did everything I could about it, but there was a certain point where I couldn't do more.
Yeah.
And I would say the same thing about the work I did at Apple was, and frankly, and the notion of taking an entire company culture from thinking different to working different together was everything I wanted in my marriage.
Wow.
And so we start co-creating, and out of this emerges what's become the book, right? And same idea, which is we experience fear in our lives. We can be brave, right? We can work harder, we can work smarter. But that's not enough. And it wasn't enough. And it's not enough in these relationships that we think are working, but in reality, it's surface. And we know, if we know what those best relationships are in the world and beyond this world, right? If we're talking in the universe, we're talking spiritual things here. So you lean into the Lord and you know who he is fundamentally, the best friend who exists.
The ultimate co-creative
And you
relationship.
can lean into him
Yep.
in the storms, the worst storms.
Yeah.
Then why not? Why can't it be like that with other people? You know? And if it is, what kind of life is that? And that's the life that I'd say you discover it in moments, right? But if it's in glimpses, that's good. But what if you start to amplify and that light just spreads everywhere and you have an experience where you're a different person, right?
Because Ian and Chris, you guys gave me that vocabulary. I was saying that before we even started. After I met you guys in December, we're in 23.
23.
December 23. And I was listening to you guys talk about the book and like the big, the frameworks around it and the words around like how you guys the big word that like just imprinted on me was co-creation. And you guys gave me vocabulary for what was happening to my life when I decided I'm going to start co-creating with God. I don't want to do things anymore without him. Like I just don't. And then I got to a point where I literally can't do anything without him.
And that's not just blind dependency.
Right.
That's interdependent. You're being strengthened while also seeking to be connected.
Yeah.
He says you're in a moment in your life and you broke the bow that you've always depended on for food.
Yeah.
And you're saying, well, God could give me a bow, or you get to work building a bow with the inspiration that he's giving you. And then, by the way, maybe the next thing is you got to build a boat. And you've never done this before. You don't even know how it's done. But God, you know that you got to get to the promised land. But the only way you're going to do it is by him showing you the blueprint of how to actually do this.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, man. That word's in a lot of conversations now. A lot of conversations.
You guys are opening you're taking us. They're taking us further than we've been. You know,
What
in most
has
podcasts.
been
I'll tell you what.
Messy for you as you have this kind of mindset shift and you're trying to do co-creation or be a co-creator more intentionally, like what have been some missteps? What have been some bright spots?
This is where okay. To get really real, this is where, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, some people listening might think I'm crazy, because the closer I get with God, up is down and down is up. This is like real for me in my life today. And so there is a component of supernaturalness. There really is, where because I want to co-create with God, right? My, higher being, which is, you know what I mean? That's like huge, right? So there's going to be things that there's no way I can do it, but he can. And there's this, and the misstep that happened very early on was I'm so used to controlling everything.
So surrendering
that control, man.
The beauty too is you're his son.
Yeah.
Right. You're on the genealogical tree of eternity. You're one click away.
Yeah.
He loves you, and he loves us, right? He loves us on that level where it's like we can step into that relationship with full confidence.
Yeah.
And as we do, it's like you said, it unlocks everything. And it's crazy because, how often have we gotten caught in that, that surface or the mire? And then it makes you wonder, like, here's a what if scenario. I used to love the Marvel comics, the what if. And then they have the show.
I wanted to do that for Star Wars, by the way.
Yeah, at some point, hopefully.
But they should do, sorry.
No, they should. You're
Let's
right.
talk afterwards.
You're right.
Like, what is, we got friends. We can.
Here's a what if. And this is going to sound weird, but like, take away the pandemic. What would we have learned? Would we be even sitting at this table right now?
No,
Whoa.
I don't
would
think
we be
so.
having a conversation like this?
Yeah, not at all.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Pandemic was weird.
I met this guy
because of the pandemic. Yeah.
Well, think about that.
Yeah.
God is so good.
Yeah. Wow. That's good.
He's working in the pain,
in the details,
in the struggles, in the crazy things that we think this sucks.
Yeah.
It's like, but look at all these things I'm giving you.
Wow.
That's wild. Yeah, when I think about the pandemic, my default goes to the negative things, and it's the loss and it's the pain and the struggle. My default doesn't go to like, what have you gained from the pandemic? Like, what have you become stronger at because of the pandemic? What was birthed out of the pandemic that has changed your life and that has set you on a path that you're on right now? And would that have happened had there not been a pandemic? And I think the answer is no, it wouldn't have. And when I think about, speaking of the painful things that have, obviously, as you go through it, it sucks and it hurts and you would love for nothing more than for it to stop. But then you can't control it. It's going to keep happening. So then at some point you just lean into the pain and you kind of like, okay, I can't even stop this. So like, how do I just kind of like, let's go, let's keep it going. Where's this going? Like, where are we headed now? Because like, the more you try to push against, like, no matter how strong you are, go on the ocean, a wave will knock you down. But if you learn how to go with it, now you can actually surf that wave. You could ride it, you can enjoy it. And then you can see where that wave takes you, and then you can kind of coast, and then another wave comes along. So now you're kind of playing with the things that are the uncontrollables. Like you're playing
riding
with
the
it.
wave.
You're riding the wave. But if you go against it, you're gonna get hurt. You're gonna get knocked over.
So this is a great analogy. In fact, we were talking for a second about Marvel too, but it'll tie in. So in the book, one of those chapters, 16, I think it is, later, we talk about this experience, and I think it relates to exactly what we're talking about. So the foundation of what started as everything we know about the Marvel universe, Jon Favreau, who is now effectively saved or started the Marvel universe, or Star Wars with Mandalorian, right? Like, saved that after, depending on your perspective on 7 through 9, but it's a very controversial question at this point, right? Let's just leave it at that. But Mandalorian, he created this brain trust, these people that come together and build things. But going back to Iron Man, this was him and Robert Downey Jr., who, by the way, was going through that journey of his own, right? He hadn't had a second chance. Jon Favreau fought the executives to have him play that role.
Wow.
And we know him as Tony Stark because he is. Right?
Talk
He's
about
Tony Stark.
Rebirth.
But he would never have had that chance.
Yeah.
And
right.
literally, Favreau had to put his job on the line for this.
Yeah, because at that time he wasn't like doing well career-wise. Right?
No, well,
It
he'd
was
come
a
out of rehab.
Downward spiral.
Right. He went to jail, came out of rehab, and his career hadn't really had a chance.
Right.
So they end up in a trailer working on the movie, and Jeff Bridges shows up, and he's used to having a script always. He shows up, he's like, "Where's the script, guys?" And he thought he'd get. There's no script at that point. He's done a lot of movies. He's never had this experience, and he's like, "I don't even know how to operate like this." But they're sitting there, and Favreau saying, he's going back and forth, and what do you think this character would say? What do you think that character would say? Okay, play him. Switch character, and they're just doing this.
Whoa,
and
that's so
Bridges
cool.
says Favreau's riding this wave so beautifully. Downey Jr.'s, Robert's riding the wave too. And then the Marvel suits in the room, probably, Kevin Feige, like, you can't. He doesn't say the character doesn't say that in the comics. He doesn't say it. It's like, don't care. Like, and Bridges he's like, okay, I'm gonna ride the wave. Right? This is crazy. I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen. This is a $200 million, $300 million, whatever it costs, right?
Yeah,
if it fails too, by the way, you have no Marvel universe.
Yeah.
They don't even know this at the time, as they're planning for it, hopefully. But everything's riding on it. And, in our lives, everything's riding on our, for us personally, right? But it's also a question of like, are we going to lean into the up is down, the down is up, the riptide that feels like there's no answer, right? Except maybe that is the answer. Maybe that is the adventure. Right? Maybe the experience it's taking us where we need to go.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what it takes to be brave or brave together.
Yeah.
It's not this notion where you run towards the wave and you're facing the fear. You're trying to conquer something great and be bravado about it. It's more the simple and small steps. It's like, stop hiding under the bushel, start to reach out more. Stop waiting for other people to take the lead to make a difference in your life, contribute to others and your relationships, make those more intentional. That's being brave together. That's co-creation. That's riding the wave. It's not like going into a dark cave without a flashlight. Like that's how we imagine being brave, is like doing something extreme. And it's not that.
The other thing that's beautiful is you don't have to have it all figured out.
I love that.
And that's the power. That's the power of a team.
Totally.
Right? And this is based on fundamental truth that is timeless. Where two or three are gathered, right? In my name, he says. In his name, in principle, right? In timeless principle.
Yeah.
And guess what happens? It unlocks. This is our experience. It's like suddenly all these things start to emerge. And, James we connect with. I can't. I lost track of how many people I know that are big connection people that somehow I'll just be like, oh, so and so. I'm like,
how many dots have James connected?
Started with
for
James.
That's what I mean.
I don't even know anymore.
It's literally living abundantly, right? It's like,
and this is a guy who literally. So his friend Charlie, I met on LinkedIn, who's like, hey, he reaches out. He's like, hey, can you give me some career advice, HR stuff? And I'm thinking, oh, this is a two or three gathered moment. I bring in, and we're gonna ask him about his challenges right now, what he's going through. This isn't about like just career.
Sure.
Let's go deep with him.
Yeah. And
so we frame up, hey, what's your pain, right? How are you turning that into power? He had a lot of pain at the time. He'd been like, some things happened in his career. It was kind of messy, and this moment, I think it helped propel him a lot. Wow. And he said, I got to connect you with my mentor. Charlie's he runs strategy for the San Antonio Spurs, doing what he loves.
Awesome.
Right?
He's awesome. Talk about brave together. He's doing it right now.
And then James, we meet him for a call, and he's like, you guys are an answer to my prayer.
Yeah.
Like, wow. All out of, just these kind of moments, or the ride the wave moments, right?
Yeah.
What if we didn't ride that wave? What if we said, oh, well, I don't know. I mean, should I even connect with this guy?
You drop the pretense. You drop the expectations of what you're going to get in return.
Yeah.
And you just be who you are and who you need to be in each moment, right?
Good.
There's something there that, yes, I completely resonate with that, because I think without me even realizing, or I'm not deciding like, oh yeah, I'm going to live my life that way. That looks like it's fun. Like I feel like I don't know how else to live life, because, I think God's just wired me in such a way that I operate only in like passion. Like if I don't care about the thing, I don't care how much
it's gotta light you up.
I will suck at those things that don't light me up. I'm not wired to do things that I don't care about. So God's wired me just like, you're just all passion. And then that could like be kind of dangerous though too, right? Because it's just like, I could, if I'm not tethered, like I will be a loose cannon. You know what I mean? Like, because everything, the newest thing that makes me, I'm passionate about this. And I was like, okay, let's go for that, And I feel like there needs to, and I've learned to sort of dial it back and sort of, put myself on a leash in some ways. But the reason why I love what you guys are talking about is because I'm experiencing that again. Like I said, I've done this my whole life, but I'm experiencing a new version of that right now as we speak. And we're talking about rebirth and the discomfort of a rebirth.
But those emotions don't go away. The cycle brings out the same pain and fear.
Yeah.
And it's hard. And it's like, but things were going good, right? Why would I need to transform again or extend myself, right?
But it's those tension moments that breakthrough is right on the other side of that tension.
Hands down.
The analogy of a slingshot, right? Like you pull that rubber band
tension
back.
And it's not just, it's the tension, as you said, it's the tightest tension, right? We usually believe, and as you said earlier, we want that. And, this is one of the challenges of being in a society that has been so blessed, right? That the standard of living is so high than comparative to any time in history. And in a country where, compared to any other country, generally speaking, right? We have so many opportunities and so many things. And so the downside is at times something will hit us out of the blue and we'll say, I don't like that. That's so painful. And it's, it doesn't feel like Pop-Tarts and feather beds. Not that we're out for that, but it's a struggle.
Yeah.
And when struggles show up, and we have to have a relationship with that struggle. And this is what I learned was I was in the depths, and this counselor therapist, she got recommended from this leader at church, and he's like, she's the person. She's, this like Native American shaman, lives in the spirit world. And she's just like, I was going through some of the worst pain of my life. And she's like, you have to lean into the pain.
Wow.
I'm like, I don't want to do that. Is there a different way?
Is there another option B?
No.
Or
because here's the thing. If you go a different way, you're escaping the pain to find some other answer that's just going to create more pain. That's the void, right? Wow. You stare into the void. This is where addiction happens, right? This is where, other things happen that aren't good, right? It's the dark side. But that pain and leaning into it is not comfortable ever. And it's like, I know we're going back to pain, but it aligns to what you're saying because it's about change, right? And change is, but it's also transformative. The bright side of that is like, look at what we're becoming. Even 2, 3, 5 years ago, if you look back and going back to the Days of Future Past thing, you're having a conversation with yourself. I think about now, you'd say, wow. Looking ahead, I guess, if you're looking from Ben to front, oh, wow. This guy has learned a lot, I'm really proud of him. Maybe don't even recognize him. It's just like, cause this guy is like so concerned about the surface stuff. It's like, look at this guy he's wearing his heart out there. Like that's who I really always wanted to be,
What's up, Stewards? Thank you guys so much for supporting good service. If you guys love what we do, then become a Patreon subscriber. As a Patreon subscriber, you get exclusive content every single week.
From Q&As to solo reflection rounds, extended episodes, spicy takes, vlogs, and so much more. You're going to find all of that exclusively on our Patreon. Log on to patreon.com/goodservice. Thank you guys so much for your support. Back to the episode. Over here preaching to us, man. I'd love to understand. So you guys have a book together. You guys have a company together. Why? So, okay, let me take it back a little bit. So for those, we keep using this word co-create. How do you guys define co-creation? Like what is co-creating by the way that you guys understand it?
Yeah, I think by default, the settings we're in, it's usually we're taught that it's about teamwork, right? It's a group of people that work together. Okay, well, that's one way to look at it. Collaboration might be assignment based. Like you get to work on a specific project with someone, but maybe you don't get to choose who you're working with, right? Collaboration is on a higher level. This is where you can get intentional about the quality of work you want to pursue and who you get to work with. Now, granted, you may be in a situation where it could be the traditional teamwork setting. You're in a department and it's like there's friction with some folks, there's personality differences, there's a competing of ideas.
Sure, yeah.
But with co-creation, it starts with you. You're a creator. And so what intention are you bringing? Are you open? Not everyone in the room is going to be open when you're working with others, but are you open to their ideas? Because if they're guarded, you're guarded, it's a closed model. Nothing's going to really transform. But if you're open, they're closed, they start to open up.
Yep.
Because they can sense that you're open. That's co-creation.
Yeah.
When you can remove the barriers and blocks and let things flow, people tend to view flow on an individual level. You know, athletes do this. You're in the zone. You're shooting threes like Curry.
It's awesome.
It's flow. Michael Jordan. I admired the flow when he got into it as an athlete. Kobe Bryant, right? These are the greats.
Yep.
But in a team or group dynamic, a traditional work setting, you don't experience shared flow. So that's what you got to strive for as a co-creator, as a creators. How can I utilize these principles? How can these principles change me, influence me in how I approach others and how I serve and how I contribute? That's co-creation kind of 101.
Yeah. So that difference between, you know, what you do that makes your heart sing, right? You dance, you know, with food, like we got the food, you know, and we're feeling it now, right? The flow.
Yes, we are feeling that. It is hitting right
or
now.
People,
Oh yeah.
or people paint, you know, they do
Get a little
sport.
sugar, guys.
Yeah. They play basketball and you feel this, you step outside of time, right? And then to Ian's point, well, what happens when that's in a group setting, right? The 2 or 3 or more, and then it happens, right? That's shared flow. You're in an experience, right? The Navy SEALs have this experience and they're like, they don't really know how to hire for it. They don't know how to identify it. They don't even know almost what it is, but it's shared flow.
It's where you can be yourself and your skills and gifts are also making a difference.
Right.
I think the concept of belonging and inclusion are kind of intertwined. People think, oh, I need to belong. I need to be included. But it's really simple if you break it up. Belonging isn't waiting for someone else to accept you. It's you taking initiative to contribute and make a difference. And that's when your purpose is activated. You're like, oh, I have this sense of belonging because what I do is landing. It's doing something for somebody else. I feel like I belong to this group or in this type of work. Inclusion is where the group is being welcoming. The group is being mindful to be involving, inviting, including, recognizing. Those two things matter, right? One without the other, it's a little deflating. So we got to strive for both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Co-creation becomes less of I'll call it a creative act in this sense, and more of a creative way of being with others, right?
I almost feel like it sounds like the concept of improving, right? Like in a room when you're talking about Favreau, Robert Downey Jr., and then Bridges comes in and is like, yo, like, what are you guys doing? This is not. And so if anything, that sort of, what are you guys doing? This is not the way it's supposed to be done. It's like, yo, you're missing the opportunity to catch flow with these guys. And he's like, you know what? Let's do that.
Jazz.
There you go.
Music.
Yeah. Jazz music, freestyle dance. I get this because they say that the way the rules of improv is like the yes and, right? Like, okay, cool. You said that. I'm gonna add to that with an and this, and then you're gonna be okay. Well, then yes to that, and then let me add this. And so now we're going somewhere together. So it's this idea. I see this picture of looking at a room full of people and knowing that there's a yes to everybody in here somewhere. So it's this this attempt to find the yes
That's a
in the
good way to
room
put it.
from everyone. Yeah. So where is all those yeses taking us? And sometimes it may not necessarily be this life-changing or this monumental thing that you create, but you created something. And I think that what's also important is not that like, oh, you know, this model can apply to any group of people and you're going to create. I mean, sometimes what you realize you created was like, okay, that's what we got here. Maybe that's not what I'm, you know, I want to sign up for, so to speak. And so you kind of find another group, but you
find your people you attempt Absolutely. To be a good co-creator.
Yeah.
You learn what works with what you're bringing. You learn what works within given groups and you apply it everywhere.
Yeah.
But not everything's meant to be co-created either.
That's true.
So there's things that you do need to wrestle with on the individual level and refine and optimize, but it should be about optimizing your relationships.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Figuring out how to navigate those, strengthen those.
Yeah. You know, something that I've been feeling happening in terms of, I personally have been feeling it in the last maybe 2 to 3 years for myself personally, is this, you know, so growing up in the church, I was used to like, you go to that church, cool. That's its own thing. You have your own way of doing things. We don't really cross boundaries into those other churches. I'm over here with my church. We do things this way. And then even when I think about outside the four walls of church, even let's say entertainment, you know, Christian entertainment, it seemed very bubble. Like there was, you know, this artist
like silos.
Silos of
silos.
A lot Everyone's building their empire.
Exactly. Yep. Individual empires where, I mean, I don't see anywhere in the Bible where that's what God says to do. He says build his kingdom and he calls all of us to do it. Like all of us to participate together to build one thing for his glory. But yet we are so used to building on our own individual levels.
Yeah, I think you're nailing something that is really important in our times and in the future. If we're to accomplish, say, the prophecy that Martin Luther King set forth, right? That these things will converge, that all the peoples will come together, right? In the spirit of truth and principle. Well, it's everything you're saying as to like what that requires, right? And we think about it, you could look at this two-dimensional world that existed, and I think pandemic's a good milestone to say, like, how did this work before? Okay, don't be reactive, right? Reactive is bad. It's like, and that's true. Like, you know, if we're reactive, you're just kind of being acted upon, right?
Or recognize when you're reacting.
Right.
That's a good.
But be proactive, right? Take a stand, do the right thing, try to, you know, take action. But we see this too. It's like there's actually a higher order, which is be co-creative with others.
Yep.
Look horizontally.
Try to start there.
And these false barriers that we perceived that existed. Because the other thing that's happened in companies, corporate world too, they've scienced the heck out of this stuff and they've made it checklists and very bureaucratic. And the silo building has gone on for decades.
You're losing the art of it.
Right. The silo building has gone on for decades. So you have the status quo inertia that preserves that, maintains that. Yeah. But the truth of it is, it's like there's a book called The Way of Kings, one of my favorite books. And there's a story in that book about a king who people walk around and they're like, oh, well, the rules are, you can't do that. You know, that's the king says, you know, it's against the rules. And they're all doing this, right? Everybody in the kingdom. At one point, somebody goes to the castle and they find out the king's been dead for 10 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So the permission was already granted.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. And the permission has been granted for us to connect.
That's good.
We stand in our own way, though.
Yeah.
Right? We let other voices enter our head and drown out our own voice.
We're human beings.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. I think there's a fear. There's definitely fear, and anxiety is like rampant all the time, where it's like, if I give up control, if I surrender, right, then it's an abyss.
Or someone might get the best of me, right?
Or someone might get the best of me.
Right.
And it's so scary. The unknown is so scary that it stops me from, and I'll just speak for some of my own experience early in the last 2 years, where there's those moments where you're just like, wait, if I do that, what happens? You know, and then you're so scared of the what will happen that you find yourself just kind of going back to your own inertia of doing whatever is safe in your mind, But that doesn't mean it's going to produce anything. You're just going to do that though. And then you're in this weird hamster wheel and you're just trying to do something different, but you're sad because you know it's wrong. And like, it's
you're
like
not being true.
Yeah, exactly. And going back to how living true, you're definitely living a lie. You're definitely living a lie.
Well, I think there's something too to be said about, and when you're in those moments, because we all are, right?
Yeah.
And those can still happen every day, right? It could happen.
True.
And where do you turn for strength? And we talked about the Lord. I mean, being an elder brother, the Savior. It's like, or you lean into His perfection, right? And then the other thought is, we have angels round about us, and these are people that have sacrificed their lives so we could be doing the very things we're doing right now in the place where we're doing them in a free land like this. And, I had a moment where I was just in the depths of pain. I didn't know any of this stuff, but I just started studying it. I found out about an ancestor of mine who, he was just in a full struggle. His parents had died of their sickness, and he's basically on his deathbed. He's sick too, 10 years old. And he's living with his uncle, and his uncle's like, if you don't work, you're worthless. So imagine you're 10 years old, your parents just died, you're sick, uncle's telling you you're worthless if you don't work for him. What do you do, right? Yeah. You're depressed. He opens the Bible and starts reading, and he finds that verse where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I'll be also. He's living in a place where they don't allow for this, right? There's one church, and that's just how it is, Church of England. Right. He decides, I'm not going to be part of that. He starts on his own. He's 10 years old, right? And he ends up leaving with a group to Holland. He's 15 at that point. And they're trying to find this. Like, where is this place where we could do this? Whoa. And they don't quite find it there. But they end up talking to some people, and they get funding from this thing called the Fellowship of Adventurers. And
what?
Yeah,
cool. That was the VC back then.
Yeah. And they're basically like, look, all these other things have failed. Yeah. And they don't know why. But what had really happened was they'd send these groups out, and they were interested in the money, self-interest. And when things got rough and it got savage out there, which they would, it was every man and woman for themselves. Yep. So these people go, and their fundamental premise was like we talked about with you too. It was like God and us, and we are going to build something together. Right. Yeah. So they go, and it's kind of like this, the Fellowship of Adventurers are saying, yeah, this will be just interesting. Like, you guys are probably going to die, but like, hey,
I'm sure some VCs do that with startups.
We'll make some money.
Yeah.
Who knows?
See what you can do.
Right? Who knows?
Right. Yeah.
They go, they get to the harbor of Massachusetts Bay in the winter conditions. It's like deathly savage, right? Yeah. Half the people die of cholera in the bay, right? In the boat. So this same guy, he's older now. My ancestor, he's in the boat. His 3-year-old son dies. Oof. Then his wife either falls overboard or jumps overboard. We don't know, right? Maybe she's so depressed. I don't know. Wow. But imagine that. You're in a situation where half your people have died. Your own people your wife and son have died. And what do you do? I mean, he had every reason to say, like, you know what? I'm going to call it, right? Yeah. We're done here, and it's all like ice and snow on land. So we're going to go there, and, there's no heater. But it was faith and the commitment to each other. We could call it be brave together. It was co-creation. It was selfless interest in others. Yeah. And
not every man for himself.
And a covenant to a higher power, to God, right? That we're going to stick through this together. Yeah. They get on land, and it's ice everywhere. Oh, hey, let's go. Somebody says, let's go hunting. And his name's William Bradford. He says, oh, it's Sunday. It's a Sabbath. Let's pray. We'll get food tomorrow. That's good. They do. The next morning, one of the guys goes out. He digs up this burial ground. He finds this corn that's just been buried. This helps them survive
from the last
for the winter
that didn't survive.
Wow.
There was
this keeps those 50 people alive for the winter.
Yeah. Wow.
He goes on to become the governor for 30 years, and they succeed. And Plymouth became. He kept a journal. Plymouth Plantation. He talks about being guided to the promised land, and all these things that are scriptural, and they become the template for what the founding fathers looked at and said, this can work. Selfless interest in others, right? Private ownership of property, freedom of religion.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing that's super interesting to me that I realized the other day. The principle of 2 or 3 gathered, he lived it, right? Yeah. And they had the Magna Carta, which became the foundation for the Constitution. And then they also end up, and one of the greatest celebrations, and this is indicative of what we're doing here, it's like giving thanks to God, right?
Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
That's right.
And what was the nature of that? Well, they're there, and whatever the stories that get told, okay. But what really happened was they became friends with the Native Americans who were friendly, Squanto and others. And these groups are together, having dinner together, playing games together, worshiping together.
Yeah.
So where 2 or 3 are gathered, people, that can turn into groups of people. Those silos we've been talking about, those organizations, countries, right?
Yeah.
We're gathered together in his name and just like in timeless principles.
Yeah.
What can happen?
Yeah.
Man, that's there's such an importance about this topic of selfless interest in others is so like, because it's literally that the current culture, current pop culture anyway, it's not that. It's
me.
It's so me. It's about what's your personal brand, That's why we have millions of podcasts. Shout out to our podcast community.
We love y'all.
Not that we're trying to
put a plug. Stay subscribed, please.
No, but it begs the question of like, what does the future look like?
Yeah.
And I think we look at it like, hey, Disney was great.
Yeah.
It was a guy too. But at one point Walt said like, hey, it's not me. It's Disney, right? It's a brand. It's its own thing.
Yeah.
But then what rescued Disney was Pixar, right? But Pixar was a collective. It wasn't Ed Catmull, right? It wasn't Steve Jobs. It was Pixar.
It was, but it was all the other people.
But that feels like the future though.
Yeah.
That feels like these collective, right?
Right.
Experiences, shared brand,
That's
right?
good. Yeah.
Shared. God.
Yeah.
Ecosystem.
Yeah. And so like going back to what I've been feeling in the last few years for myself is I'm feeling that shift. I'm seeing even within the church and or just the different Christian spheres that I was used to seeing very siloed and very just, independent, doing your solo thing. And I'm seeing that, and I've been feeling it myself, this spirit of collaboration of rather than build your own thing and doing it by yourself, why don't you build together and specifically for building God's kingdom? So even as as we're talking, I'm recognizing where we're at, we're at the lab, that this space we've only become aware of because of the people that we've met over the last year. And we got connected with you guys because of those people that we met who invited us to this space, that we were at a talk that you guys were giving about this book that you wrote. And we built this podcast in the last year because he and I just so happened to meet during the pandemic. And then we're like, hey, maybe we should do something together. And then who are we going to talk to? Well, why don't we bring on all these people that we've been meeting and we'll have these conversations as we break bread and all of it and then we would do it at this space that we are no longer there. It's like, well, where do we go? Hey, we know some good folks over here down, in the South Bay. So it's all like, it was by result of co-creating with one another
and being open
and then it's to me like, and shout out to, Scott and Tracy, like them being open to like, yeah, why don't you guys come in here? And like, this is interesting to me because that's not what this space is quote unquote for. It's not like, oh yes, we host podcasts here, but it's like
they're open.
Exactly. I think that's
what if.
The what if. It's the like, hey, we don't do that, but we can. Let's try it.
Selfless
and so I'm like in real time, like sort of recognizing that we are in progress and forward motion of co-creating, and who knows where this this gathering here today, who knows what comes from this? And it not that it has to be a project or it has to be anything.
But it could. What if?
Could be. Yeah,
Could.
what if? But
Yeah.
even if it was just a relationship and a meal and a conversation that was like, if that was it, I'm like, man,
A moment in time.
yeah, and that's all I needed. You
We're
know
gonna
what I
have
mean?
a restaurant soon together.
See?
It was like, what?
When we're gonna call it
Please, Kevin.
Papa Pitas, or what did you call them? Papa
fusion.
People
Pitas.
call it Papa Pitas?
Pita poppers.
Pita Poppers. There you go.
Hey, so let's switch gears because you started us off with a question that was retrospective about the pandemic and discovery. Let's go future oriented.
Let's go.
Future-spective.
Future-spective. I like that.
So, what are you most excited about for the future in terms of co-creation and what you're able to do in the near future?
Those what ifs.
I will say for me, because my in retrospect, let me just start there real fast. It's been dance, right? And so there was a point when I was starting out dancing where I wouldn't, in my early dance career, I would never be like, I'm a professional dancer that's established in X, Y, or Z. I'm like, I'm just trying to see where dance takes me. And I was saying that for years, even though I was performing at a pretty high level and I was sort of working in that space. In the early part of my career, I would say I'm trying to figure out where this dance thing is going. But there was a point after a good amount of years had passed where I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. I'm a professional dancer. Because enough history has passed where I'm like, well, there's a pretty big road behind me where I know that I traveled. Now I know that I've gotten to a place where I'm like, yeah, this is the road that I'm on. So my future perspective is I am at the beginning of a new road where now I would say at this part, I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to see where this connecting with people.
A little bit wiser though.
Yes, absolutely. Well, in the name of Jesus, thank you. But like, I'm at a place where I'm like, I'm going to see where this podcasting thing, connecting with people in an intentional type of way, I'm going to see where this thing's going to take me. And my future perspective side is saying, I can't wait till I'm at a point where like, yeah, this is what I do, and this is the road that I'm on.
I love that. And I would offer this thought too, which I love, because the question is like about what you said, kind of aggregating those experiences that compound enough to give us the confidence to trigger to pass through that threshold.
Yes.
Right. And to say, okay, that's what I do.
Yep.
I've asked myself this other question, which is how can I accelerate that in such a way where you show up already that way?
Woo.
Right.
Yeah.
So Steven Spielberg,
Uh-huh.
right, wanted to be a director. They wouldn't give him a time of day at Universal. He decides one day, he just shows up, goes to a trailer, puts his name badge on the door. Steven Spielberg, director, starts directing movies there.
You don't like the story of your life?
I just got chills.
Start writing a new one.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's so good.
You
Start
declare
living
it.
it, yeah.
Right?
That's
You declare. What are the most powerful words in Scripture? I am.
Yeah.
Abraham,
Yeah.
man.
And God.
But we're talking about
God.
Abraham.
Right.
That's so good. I mean, yeah, I've heard like people say act as if, right? Like act as if you are that. That like that's so good. I mean, there's Sylvester Stallone, the same thing, right? Like no one would hire him as an actor, so he just wrote his own parts, wrote his own
actor and a director.
Right, yeah.
So good.
Gosh,
And,
his origin story is so
Yeah.
And
wild.
Rocky, how could you dismiss
Yeah.
Rocky? That's like,
Yeah.
And then holding the line to be the guy, to be the actor, because like it was like the deal was way better to not do it, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, we'll just buy the script off you.
Yeah. Yep.
I come with it.
And that's that double down thing that, when you just know in your gut, and forget just gut, because sometimes I don't trust my gut because my gut be off sometimes. But like when we prayerfully, like when we partner with God, when we like God, I feel like I want to go this way. Can you partner with me on that? Like, can we create this pathway together? Because me by myself, I don't trust that. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have the skills to do that by myself. But when I'm inviting God into that, and letting God take the lead. You know, I don't mind playing that backseat of when God's driving the car. As long as I know, hey, I'm in the car with you though, Lord.
I love that.
And but like I know that God has a much better driving record and a GPS system than I do. But you know, when we invite God into those creative processes of like, I think God, I think I want to go this way. And can you help me like figure out how to go there? And if we're not going there, then redirect me. Like, let's drive somewhere else. But you gotta show me like how to get to that other place. And I think that's where I'm learning, you know what I mean? Like I love driving with the Lord, but when he's in the front driving and I'm kind of hanging out in the back, you know?
Yeah. We know what's crazy is, Ian, you're the second person to ask me that today. Like, what are you excited about moving forward?
Did Chris hit you up earlier?
No. It was someone completely different. Someone you guys should meet, by the way. But he asked me that, and I realized my answers to this is so much simpler than they used to be. They used to have so much like, oh, this, that, and the other.
So many expectations tied to it, right?
Yeah, but now it's almost like boring. Like my answer is really boring, and it's like I talked about how I've been changing a lot because of my radical encounter with God 2 years ago. And so what really excites me is by co-creating with God and allowing him to take the wheel more than me, I'm just really excited about living like the day-to-day right now. I really am, man.
You're activated in life.
Dude, I feel so present every day.
I'm willing to guess too, based on what you just said, back when you were on the surface, right? And we were all kind of, I mean, a lot of us, right? I was there, right? I'd say before all that stuff hit, I was doing a lot of surface stuff, right? And it was like, okay, but we call this nexting, which is, oh, well, I'm going to be happy when this happens, when this happens, when that happens. And then you get there and it's no, because it's the next thing.
You're always focused on what's next.
But what you just said is so powerful. Being joyous in the moment.
So joyous, dude.
Like right now. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And just feeling that, right? Letting yourself feel that, because the next moment's going to be that moment. Yeah. Right? It's going to be now.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
One of the most challenging things for my team that works with me today, I have a team that's in branding and restaurants, right? So there's a few of them. What's frustrating for them is now my calendar, because, you know, everyone's like, oh, every 15 minutes, every 10 minutes, whatnot, you know. I tell everyone on my team that I'll either be really early or really late for everything. And they're like, what do you mean? And I go, well, every meeting I set now, I leave a large amount of buffer time because I don't want to cut anyone off anymore. I just don't want to do that.
You don't want
anymore.
to box them in anymore.
Nope.
That's so good.
So if I only have 15 minutes with someone, I'll tell them like, hey, I only have a few minutes, but I can call you right now. So I allow them to take up all that 15 or more. I don't like to even tell them. And if I'm going to be late, I'll already text the next person. I'm like, hey, I'm running a few minutes late. It's because like, I really do want to give them whatever happens type of thing. It's because, and it's really given me so much more life. Like it's insane.
That's awesome. Love that.
So,
you're giving, right?
Yeah.
To them.
Yeah.
Space.
But I know it sounds like I'm being generous to somebody, but it's selfish. It's for me, man. It feels good for me.
It's the fuel we talk. It's the fuel we talked about.
It should be win-win.
Yeah.
That's
And not
me,
starting with the transaction,
Yeah.
but aiming for transformations with each other.
I think honestly too, like when we think about what prayer really is, what you just said, I think Heavenly Father feels that way. He's like that. Yeah. He's like, it's so much joy for him to be in that moment with us where we're pouring our hearts out. And we know the difference, right?
That's so good.
When it's prayer that like means something.
Yep.
You know, it's like, wow. Like, and we don't always think about it. We think about it from our perspective. It's like I know as a dad, I'm like, that is like when my kids are like, there's a connection. Oh yeah. And as a man, as a leader, you can have that too. So good. And as a person, you can have that with others every day.
Yep.
And I we think, and the other thing is we look at so many alternatives, and I think back, Moses, like, oh yeah, golden calf, whatever these things are that are like world made, man made, right?
Yeah.
And yet it's all right in front of us, right? The greatest experiences with each other, right? The Harvard study, 80 years, like relationships, that satisfaction, happiness, all of it. It's like,
Relationships.
I listen to this podcast, David Brooks, he writes about character, right? And he says, 30% of the people actually listen or ask questions and listen. And yet these relationships, that's our joy, that is where the joy is.
Maybe we should stop searching, and just start creating, and being open to creating with others, not just going at it alone.
Yeah.
The other thought that really, I don't know, for some reason it's hitting me right now is, because we're talking about relationships, and with relationships, it's inherent. We're talking about friendship too. One of my dad's favorite scriptures, Jesus wept. It was kind of the running, not to say the joke, but it was like, that's the easiest scripture to memorize. Like, it's like so easy, right? It's like, okay. Yeah. And I had no context as a kid. I'm like, okay, but I didn't know what it meant, right? I was like, okay, he cried. That's all I know. But I
can cry now. Even Jesus cried.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
And with The Chosen coming out, you're like, this guy, right?
Yeah.
And you see what's happening here. And this realization that like Lazarus is his friend, right? And he's all these other people's friend. And, Jesus, who knows the end from the beginning, he knows the plan of salvation. Sure. He knows this guy is going to be resurrected eventually. He even knows he's going to raise him from the dead then. And yet he lets that compassion, sink in and to feel it with everybody else like that, and to let it move him, right? Empathy. And I think that's what we're talking about. Like, let ourselves experience the moments instead of trying to fast forward through that, right? And he's somebody who could easily have fast forwarded through it, of all people, right? And could have fast forwarded through so many things, and all the stuff he suffered. And we're even talking about suffering and pain. I mean, it's like that's the ultimate. And he gets on the cross. It's like that is the ultimate suffering, And he's a person who could have literally just torn the nails out, got off, and showed people what was going on. But no, he loved them. He loved us.
It's good.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about being present, and Christ's presence. You're talking about the cross. He was present in that moment. He didn't fast forward through that moment.
Exactly.
He said, let me do it. Let me do this entire act moment by moment until it's done. And he remained present, even in pain. Oh my God, in pain, Christ's choice was to be present. It's easy to be present when it's fun. It's easy to be present when it's easy and you're on vacation. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we're on the beach. It's easy to be present here, but like, can we be present by choice in pain? When our Father, our leader, did that?
Wow.
So we've been talking about this notion. So Christ, the suffering. We've been talking about the collective power, the strength that we find together, which is kind of perpetual motion, right? And there's a book called The Power of Eight, and in this, the author talks about
Linda Taggart
bringing groups together, and they run these tests. These are all scientists, and they said, well, let's just see, like, if you put people in a group of 8 or 10 or 12, and you tell them to put intention towards somebody, to pray for somebody if they believe in prayer, and just see what happens. They don't know this person, right? They may have cancer, they may be going through a divorce, some financial major setback, but they're in pain, right? Real pain, like depression, pain. And they do this experiment, and they just see what happens over the course of months. Every single case, the person would come back and say, wow, I just feel like I feel much better, right? And they might not heal, it might not, everything resolved right then, but it's like they felt much better. Things were changing.
Right.
They even ran this experiment, get this, and I'd seen those ice studies about, like, where they freeze ice and people talk to water, treat it a certain way. And it flies around the internet, right?
Oh,
yeah.
But they have,
I'm gonna start doing more Google searches.
Then they freeze the ice, and then the snowflakes in the ice are like different, but like the love is like a crystallized, it looks beautiful. So, but they did this with plants, and they took a picture of 2 different plants, and they said, put your intention towards this one. Right. And they said right next to the identical plants. And the one, as people would put attention towards it, focus on it, it would grow like twice as much. I've been to Jerusalem, and when I was there, I walked through the streets and I was trying to find the place, Gethsemane, right, where he prayed, Christ prayed. And It's, named after, it's the wine press, right? Because he was being pressed for the sins of everybody. And, it was crazy because people didn't know where this was. I'm like, do you know what this is? I'm just Google mapping it. It probably wasn't the best strategy, right? Like walking around Jerusalem. Yeah. Maybe not safe either, but hey, who knew? But, but I ended up finding this place. It's in the Mount of Olives, most sacred place on earth. You get there and there's these olive trees, they're 2,000 years old, right? It's amazing, right? This place is beautiful. It's special. And you can feel how special this is, right? And this is where, to your point about being distracted or not, I mean, he told his apostles, hey, wait, and pray or wait, and they fell asleep, right? Yep. And in his compassion, it's like, okay, hey, wake up. Okay, couldn't handle God. It's okay. Yeah. He's got it. Have an angel come and help him get through it. But that suffering that he did for us, it means everything. And there's a spot in there as you pass through these trees. You go around a corner, and these tour guides, they go through and they have their company with them, and they're speaking in Portuguese or Japanese, all these different languages. But there's always a spot where they stop. And there's a church of all nations built right next to this spot. It's beautiful, and inside they have a big mural of Christ. This olive tree, there's one olive tree out of the rest, and all the rest are 10 feet tall, 8, 9, 10 feet, most typical olive tree. This one is like 2 times as tall, like 20 feet tall. And it's a spot where everybody stops because you just feel the spirit, and there's light that kind of bursts through. That's and they crazy. Take pictures right next to this tree. Wow. But it hit me. It's like, if you were a tree, and if the greatest act in human history happened right there next to you by the greatest person who ever lived, wouldn't you grow twice as tall? And what does that tell us about suffering? How it purifies and how it helps us to grow.
Wow. Man, that's wild. That's wild. I need to go check this out.
I know. Jerusalem trip.
We need to make a trip.
There we go. Let's co-create that.
Right. Absolutely.
I don't think anytime soon.
Man, I feel like we could talk forever about this with you guys, and I mean, there's so much. I wanted to tap into the book and your guys' company, but I think this to me is more important because now I'm getting a glimpse of like where all your guys' like energy and work comes from. It's what you said earlier. It's the truth that's coming from what's inside. This is where the work stuff, it's meaningless if it's not coming from a real place, And if we create from a place where we don't actually care about the thing that we're creating, I mean, it might, actually be a decent product, but there's no meaning behind it. And like you mentioned things like Disney, Apple, Pixar, what makes these companies great and timeless, so to speak, is it's the story. It's there's a story there. It's not that they have the best superior product, like the most unbreakable and technologically advanced even. There's a story of the people that are a part of those organizations that's what people are drawn towards. That's what people subscribe to. Is like, man, I like who that person is and what that company represents or what that brand represents because of the people behind it. So I think I'm like learning about, Brave Core and the book Brave Together. I know where it's coming from. It's coming from the hearts of these two men. So it's so like, I'm so blessed and inspired, as much as I was just continuing off from the talk that you guys gave here last time, the first time we met you guys. So this has been super fun, man.
Well, you unlocked us, man. Those are some questions you went deep on. So you got to the core.
You got man.
Talk about Brave Core. You to the core.
We love Brave stuff, man.
You were brave enough to take us to the core.
That's the stuff that we love. So we call this show Good Service. We like to frequent these amazing restaurants that provide good food, good experiences, and good service. And that's why we keep coming back to these places.
Love it.
But the words good service can mean different things to different people. So what does good service mean to you, Ian and Chris?
Showing up with who I am, bringing my full self to situations. And I don't always do that, but that's my litmus test is can I show up? Can I be present? And can I be more interested than interesting?
Oof, that's good.
That's I'm not gonna try to top that.
Well, we'll see you guys later.
Mic drop.
I mean, I think I guess going back to what you said about these companies, there's something about how they do that too.
Yeah.
Right. So let's take Disney. In the parks, Walt had a rule, trash can every 28 feet. Still observed today. Wow. Right? Because he saw all these other theme parks that just had garbage everywhere. And he didn't want that, right? And it was inspired by his daughters. He's like, I want to build a place that has a story, that has characters. You belong there. And when you're there, and also when they built this place, they had people say, with him, like, hey, let's build let's put kind of this plastic for these seats. And you're like, no, leather. People, you treat it nicely by the craft and the creation, people will treat it nicely.
Wow.
The carousel at the time, I don't know if it's still true, but the gold was real gold. Whoa. The carousel, because the belief was people can feel this in their soul. Right. And Apple, Steve Jobs, later, he was like, same idea, same principle. Inside the Mac, the original Macintosh are the signatures of all the people that worked on it. Whoa. And so the idea of like, what level of quality and craft are you putting into your life, right? The products, the services you're creating. Angela Ahrens, who's a good friend of ours, she was the CEO of Burberry. She's a woman of faith, just an amazing person. She became head of retail at Apple. Got paid more than Tim Cook. Not a bad gig. But she helped open the 500 stores. Her philosophy was, this is a service experience. Don't sell, serve.
Wow. Serve, don't sell.
And so she would go around at Apple. She's launched what became Today at Apple, where they do in-person creative sessions, and it's all about you, right? When you show up there, it's all care, and you go to an Apple store and you want to be there, right? It's actually a unique retail experience, and it's for those reasons. And so in my life, I think those are the kinds of those are the kinds of applications I'd say of how do we bring people into the conversation, bring them into our lives, in the moments. I think it's moments.
Kind of like what you're doing, Kevin. How you block out your time and make that intention. That's really compelling.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
That's incredible. I love that. Thank you for bringing. I love how you said it's about serving and not selling. And this is not to throw any shade to anyone who is sort of trying to promote their book or promote their podcast or promote their company. That's like a legit thing. That's why people do podcasts, right? Like, okay, let me go on there, shoot, I have a book that just came out. Let me promote it.
And that's a service.
Yeah. That's a service. Not once did I feel like you guys were trying to sell, so go buy our book, which everyone should go do though. It's legit.
Yes.
Because this is what you guys are talking about here is what's in that book. But I don't feel at all, not once from you guys, this trying to sell more copies of something. We're here to promote that. I think what you're doing is serving us by telling us what has really come from your guys' pain experiences, wisdom experiences that you've gained, and how that can help people. That's helping us. You
guys literally live it. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
It's just in the conversation because those are just your lived out thoughts on paper. That's what it is.
Yeah,
I'm realizing that right now as we're doing, I'm like, that makes so much sense.
Absolutely. But in the spirit of that, we would love to be able to serve you guys in some way. So what is something that we here or our listening audience can do to serve you guys in this time?
I think you're doing it. I mean, this is a great meal.
This was co-creative.
Yeah, brave conversation.
You have a template for co-creation.
This
Keep
friendship,
replicating it.
And like you said, we believe deep in deep, strong connections.
Yeah.
And so, like with James, we just stay connected. We keep, and there's opportunities to build things together.
We're open to stay connected. Where can this journey take the four of us?
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
We're open. Yeah.
But you guys also have a podcast, right? Lead with the question.
What is it called?
Lead with the question.
Cool.
Spotify.
It's been ranked
Apple.
top in the leadership, top 100 in Colombia, randomly.
There you go.
Poland, U.S. It's at times.
Yeah,
it's pretty saturated in the U.S.
Okay. Let's go.
You guys get guests on there too, or is it mostly?
We do.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, we're
We'd
done
love
with
to have you
season
guys
one,
on there.
but when
We're
we're
taking a break
revamp,
right now.
let's do it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And the book Brave Together, and people can find that everywhere books are sold.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
And we'll do digital lunch. So everyone open up their Lunchable at the same time on Zoom.
Let's go.
And
I love that.
and
That
then
is
we'll do
cool.
some,
That
some
is cool.
crackers and cheese.
Yeah.
I got
I
a
love
story about
Lunchables.
that. I'll tell you guys later.
Well, we got to hear the Korean wedding story. Yeah?
What?
No, it's like wait, which Koreans? I'm trying to remember which Korean story that
Scott was telling us about it.
I think it was either the funeral story or the wedding story, but I have a feeling it's the funeral story.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you guys that too.
Save
It's
that one for
wild.
another
It's wild.
Are you guys on socials? If people are listening, if
Oh, yeah,
they want to
social
like
media.
connect with you guys on social
Yeah,
media,
LinkedIn
or-
primarily.
Okay,
yeah,
LinkedIn.
or
Okay, cool.
Twitter. Yeah.
We have
but
a
most-
website.
Yeah.
What's
yeah.
the website?
Bravecore.co.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining our meal, and for hanging out with us. And folks, thanks for hanging with us for another episode of Good Service. We'll catch y'all on the next one. We out of here. Peace. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. If you like what we're doing, make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and hit that 5-star rating. And make sure you write us a review. Follow us on all of our socials at Good Service Pod on Instagram and TikTok. And make sure you follow us on YouTube and subscribe at Good Service Podcast.
Thank you guys.
Peace.